Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. My name is Lawrence Vaughn, Government Solutions Specialist here at CAD-1. I'm joined by Brian Juge, our trainer.
Hello, hello.
And Technical Specialist today. Today we're going to talk about basic families.
Actually,
yes, go ahead. All-American basic families is what I was going to say, but Juge was going to jump in here and say we're going to talk about Revit basic families. And before we do get in that discussion, I do want to make sure that everyone could hear us today. So on your right side, your task pane there, if you would kindly raise your hand to let us know that we are coming through clear.
Great. Great to hear those hands coming up.
I'll go ahead and lower everyone's hands, so I do appreciate that. And is this your first time joining us, or if you've joined us before, this task pane is the same place you will type in your questions throughout the presentation. So please feel free to type in questions, and we'll stop when appropriate and cover the question you had asked. And if it is something we do need to take offline, I could go ahead and send a quick private message over to you and let you know that we'll have to look into it a little further, or we'll get back to you at a later time. And also, so you know, we do have lots of Revit training every month. We do have a few classes that are already this month going on next week. The productivity as well the family class. That's not on this calendar now, but we do have some next week, and as you can see, we have them next month as well. The top three on the page there, those are all webinars.
No, the first one's a class.
Oh, excuse me. First one's a class, and the second two are all webinars, free events that we do just like this one. And the Revit Fundamentals on the top is a class. Again, that's one that we do have every month. Any questions, feel free to send us an email or call your account representative, then they'll fill you in and give you more information about that. You can also visit our new website at cad-1.com/events.
Yeah, and one of the ones I want to point out there is the Revit Radio, that first webinar, the second thing on your list. You know, if we can't get to your questions here, we're going to try to focus in on just families, and it's going to be kind of a I'll show you how this goes along and kind of talk us through it. But that one there is a kind of a very fun event where you can ask anything you want. So here we're going to go and start covering our learning objectives and find out what we're going to learn today. So we're going to be talking about families. We're going to examine the family editor. I know a lot of you out there might be a little bit timid about the family editor itself and not quite sure what it's all about, so we're going to get into that and introduce what it is, how to get into it. Then we're going to talk about how to create just a very basic family, how to do the basic structure of a family in here. So we'll start with what are the basics, how do I start a family. Then we're going to talk about simple parameters that we're going to put up. Mainly we're going to be doing length parameters, so it's not going to be anything advanced in this class, and we're just going to walk us through it really basic to go through this, and then we're going to use our forms tool to create the families for our projects. And so you can see down here for our families, we've got three basic families in here. We got some gambling, we got some liquor, and we got some cars. So all great things for families, right? Am I right? Yeah, exactly. So we're going to go and we're going to draw a cube. It's exciting, I know. If we have time, we'll put in some other things. We'll make this cube and we'll soup it up. We'll put some, nice fenders on it, get some hubcaps that spin or something like that. We'll soup it up a little bit. We'll pimp it out. So we'll get into that.
Pimp my cube? Is that what
Pimp my cube, that's right. So the first thing we're going to get to is the family editor. And, you know, here's God at the keyboard. He's doing a little family editing for that family guy there. So, you know, he's about ready to hit that smite button. So not quite the family editing thing we're talking about. We're actually going to talk about creating families, not necessarily editing different family members out. You might, you know, who knows? I don't know what your family is, but there might be a family member you're waiting for God to hit that button for. But that's not what we're going to be going over today. So family editor, how do we get into it? Where's it at? So when you're going in and you're working with a family, one of the things you can do is you can hit the load family button or the model in place button, and it puts you in two different types of family editors. You're either editing the family within the project, that would be the model in place, or you're going to hit the load family and, you'd go in and not load the family, but you go in and edit the family. You got the wrong two buttons there. What I meant to put in there was edit the family or model in place and create your own family. The second one is in your application menu. You can go over and just hit the new button there, go over to families and just start a new family. birds and the bees type of thing. Just get going with the new family thing. And the last one is new to 2013. You can double click on an existing family and that brings you in the family editor. So what does the family editor look like? Well, if you're in the family editor, and you're just sitting there, Lawrence, and you might not know if you're there or not. It looks the same, but if you get this control bar and it says the word create on the left-hand side, well then you're in that family editor. And if you come over and you hit that create button, you're in that family editor. So sometimes when you're doing that double click thing, you might actually get in there and get into that. So what I'm going to do is go to the next slide real quick and just show you when you're in the family editor, this is kind of the things it's going to look like. You're going to have all kinds of buttons at the top. You're going to have something called model. You're also going to see that there is the tabs that are totally different in here. So we get to see all that different stuff that's changed around. But we get some things that are familiar. We are going to see our datums, our work planes, but we also got this other button down here at the end called load into projects. So we'll be seeing a lot of that stuff in there too, and that's what we're going to do to start testing our family out once we start building it. So, and then here on the screen you can see this is kind of what a basic family looks like with these different things going on. We got something called length, we got something called width down here, and we see that those are things out there that we can go in and kind of modify, and that's what's creating our family. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to just start looking at my family here, and we'll just fire up the old Revit. Maybe. Come on, Revit. There we are. And this is typically what you're going to see when you get into the family editor. Now, what I'm starting with is something called a generic model. And what a generic model is it's basically a generic form. It's a generic model. Hey, pretty inventive there with the terminology, but that's what we're working with. It's Revit, so we're going to see different things like that. The other thing you're going to start seeing is our project browser is looking pretty thin. Not a lot of stuff in here. If I start clicking on and expanded some of these things like families, yeah, there's some basic annotation families, but not much more in there. And I've got some views. I don't have too much going on in the browser, not like what we're seeing in our projects. So we're going to see that this is kind of thinned out. We also got our different tabs. So we have a new tab, the Create tab we've been talking about. It's got some different buttons on here and kind of forms and models, something called controls and connectors, and some reference planes and reference lines. So again, it's going to be quite basic what we're going over in here, but I just want to get everybody starting to familiarize themselves with it. We do see the properties in here, and we can start looking at the different properties, and it looks a little bit different in the views. We can see that there's this other list that's being here. There's some other things that are being told, and we're going to start looking at this guy over here in the properties, and you're going to see when I start getting into there a little later on that this dialog is going to look a lot different. It's going to look a little blank, so we'll get into a bit of that. Now, on the screen, typically what we're going to have is we're going to have these reference planes. And that's going to be the start of our model. So we're going to start looking at the reference planes within this. So here we've seen this ribbon. Now I'm going to go over to the next tab on the ribbon. We've got the Insert tab. That looks the same. Annotate tab is very similar. It's kind of slimmed down a little bit, but we've got some information in there, symbolic lines, some details. We've got our View tab. And our View tab is going to be similar, but you'll see visibility graphics, thin lines, some things we're used to. But if I get into visibility graphics, you're going to see there's our model categories. A whole 2 categories. There's no doors, walls, windows, pipes, none of that. That's all gone. We just don't see that in here. In the annotation, we're going to see lines. That's really going to be it. There's going to be some other stuff once you get a little bit more advanced, but 3 tabs. Not much in here. This is where we're going to go to create all this. So we've got just some basic areas just to start looking at what's in here. Our switch windows. We've got our Manage tab. That's looking the same. We can set our units, snaps, different things like that. The Modify command, pretty much looking the same as before. Now you might have noticed that the whole time this button's been over here, and then I've got these 2 guys that have been sticking around on that end. So unlike the property, the projects were just the modify button or the select or the arrow key stays on the left-hand side. You'll notice that on the right-hand side we got this button that says Load into Project. That's going to be sticking around. Really what I want to get into, and you guys thinking about this, is anytime you see any of this stuff, you're in the Family Editor, whether it's within the project, modeling within the project. You might not necessarily see the Load into Project since you're in the project, but if you see that Create tab, you see that Load into Project button, you are, there's no probablys, right? We don't we don't assume things. You are in the Family Editor, you know, so we got to get out of there if we're in it and we don't want to be in there. But what I want you guys is to be comfortable in there and start getting in and start playing around. So now I'm going to go back to my little presentation here and just take a quick gander at, so we've done the Family Editor, just kind of a little bit of an overview of what's going on. And now we're going to get in, we're going to talk about family structure. And what I'm going to start getting in and kind of relating it to is that there's going to be, what we're going to go in is we're going to start defining parts of a body. Hey, Lawrence, I didn't know if you knew this, but my wife, she's a physical therapist. So to get her to understand this, I kind of had to relate it to something she was familiar with.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So, you know, she had all these anatomy books and stuff, so I started saying, wow, I like this analogy. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about this Family Editor portion in here, and I'm going to start equating it to different structural systems within the body, well, different systems within the body. So first thing we're going to talk about is the bones. We're going to set the bones of our project. We want our project to move around. We want our family to move. We want to have different ways of constructing it. So we're going to talk about the bones. And when we're talking about the bones in the family, here's a quick example of what we have here. This is a table. This is the default table for the project. One of the reasons I like using this is that when you load your families up on the screen, they're automatically, you can automatically find this one, so you have it available to you. So now we can look at this. Well, what are the bones in here? Well, the bones happen to be these reference planes. So these green lines in here, these reference planes and these reference lines. And you're going to see, you know, that's where they're located within the dialog. So you got the reference planes and the reference lines. And we can see we have reference lines and reference planes. Maybe I should say them in order. Since that's
might help. We don't want to confuse anyone.
Now, exactly. Now, what you're seeing on the screen over here is that these green lines, those are actually reference planes, even though they look like reference lines. And now, here's my caution. I always give everybody in class. Sometimes I get a little carried away with reference lines and reference planes. So for the purpose of this exercise, when I say reference lines, I mean reference planes. I'm strictly going to be drawing with reference planes today. We might get into a little reference lines later on, but when we're talking about this, these are going to be reference planes. These are going to be 3D planes that we see within our Revit program. And we can see that in there. So now I'm going to go back. I'm going to jump back into my Revit here. And you can see by default we only have 2 in here. I've come along and I've drawn some other ones. But I want to show you real quick on how we get those done. So I'm going to go to the Create tab, and I'm going to go over to Reference Plane, and it's going to tell me to save, and I'm not going to save right now. But I've got my drawing tool. You can see that at the top, that I've got my drawing tool over here, and I can either draw a line or I can pick a line. So if you're tracing something, maybe you've got some AutoCAD work or you got some vector stuff you want to bring in or raster stuff you're bringing in, you can draw over that. That's not a problem. We can use that as a background to draw what we need to. So there's no problem in that. And so I'm going to come over, and if I start drawing a reference plane, you're going to see it's going to draw it right on the screen. Now, I know it's a plane. You know how I know it's a plane?
Brian, how is that? How do you know that's a plane?
I know it's a plane for a couple reasons. One, I've been doing this a little long, for a while, so I just know that's. But if you can select it or pick on it, you're going to see it's called out as a reference plane. So we get to see that, and if I go over to one of my left sides or right sides, I'm going to see that I have these different planes over here. Now, some of these planes you're going to see I've been named back and front and center, front, back. So I have different reference planes in here. I'm going to get back into my floor plan view, and just to show you, here I am in the floor plan view, and I get to see that reference plane drawn in the screen. Now, one of the other ways I could go in and do this is I'm going to go to a 3D view, and you're going to see nothing's there. Hey, wait a minute, Brian, there's no reference planes. And I'm not sure if you guys know this, but if you don't look at the view perpendicular, and you have to be in an elevation section or floor plan view or ceiling plan view, you can't see the reference plane. So we'll never see a reference plane in 3D. However, I can do a work plane in 3D. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go over to my work plane. I'm going to set a work plane. And right now you'll see the work plane that we set is the floor plan. But I'm going to go in and just show you if I do back, there's the back one. If I do the front, there's the front one. And we can kind of see that plane in there. So I get to see the back plane right there. We can look at the center, front, back, and left and right just to see those planes. So those are three-dimensional planes within our drawings.
Hey, Brian, this is a good time to jump in here. We do have a question regarding reference plane.
Sure.
Does a reference plane have an inside and outside?
An inside and an outside. I'm trying to think. It was like SketchUp. No, there's not like an inside-outside. There is a positive direction and a negative direction when you're drawing with them. That there is no inside and outside within it. So I don't know if that answers your question. There's just a direction that we can draw, either a positive direction or negative direction, within that plane itself when we're assigning it volumes and stuff. So hopefully, Dan, that answers your question. And I see another comment in here. Juliana says, we don't like that double click. You know what? I don't like it either. But hopefully when the next version comes out, they're going to make that optional. I do like it for myself, because getting a lot better at double clicking what to double click on to open that family editor. But yeah, it's a pain when I'm teaching the class, because I have students and they look up and they're like, you're in that family place again, aren't you? And you're like, yeah, it's a hard habit to break. So hopefully they come out in the next version and kind of wipe that, or maybe we'll get that in a release soon to kind of fix that.
All right. Another question did come in.
Okay.
Does drawing a plane left to right or VV affect the direction of piping and connections? I'm not sure.
I'm not 100% sure with that answer. Well, I'd put it this way. It would be probably not a reference plane, but a reference line. And I know there's a direction that we can set within the reference lines. I don't deal too much in the MEP part. I'm going to have to refer that back to Tony. And let's see if Tony might be able to chime in on that one and give us an answer on that. But I'll refer that back over to Tony. I'm not quite sure. I know that they can change the direction, so it's possible, but my understanding is that, Michael, you can change that very quickly, is my understanding, what I've seen and done in the past. So if it has to do with the direction the reference line is drawn, and again, piping would probably be a reference line, not a reference plane, then yeah, you'd have to set that. One thing is important when we're drawing reference planes is you can see how the names here on one side of all these. That's because when I drew this front one and this back one, I went in and when I named it, it's going to be on the right-hand side because I drew it from left to right. So direction is important, especially for the naming convention. So when I'm drawing my reference planes, I'm going to draw from left to right, and I'm going to draw from the bottom to the top. That's going to help me out and get my things in here. So hopefully that does answer some of your questions. And other than that, it just makes it easier for me to find things. So when I'm going in and organizing these, I can kind of check out what it is. I don't have to guess with it. And there's other things going on with these reference planes. So another thing we need to look at within the reference plane, let me select one right here real quick, is if I select a reference plane, I've got a couple things I need to look at. One of them is going to be the name, and the other is going to be the is reference. So the name, that would be the name of it. So this one that I drew has no name. But if I select this one over here, it's called back. And the is reference is the back. The is reference is the back because that is the back. So when I go to the back view, this over here is the view I'm looking at. So that will be the view of this reference plane. So if this reference plane were to move up, now the back view would be way up here. If it were to move down, then the back view would be down. So that's the way we can get in and kind of change that around and have that thing in there with the is reference. And if we look at the is reference, we've got the top, the center, the back, the front, left, right. We also have these other three at the top here. And these other three at the top we can see that they are not a reference, strong reference, and weak reference. So not a reference means you can't pick it. So when you put it in a project, you can't select on it. This might be like a handle of a desk you're building. You don't want anybody to accidentally dimension that, but you need a reference plane to kind of determine what the height of that drawer handle needs to be. So you'd set that as a non-reference. A weak reference would be like inside a wall. You got different layers, but you don't want it to hit it by default. So you have to use that tab key to kind of select it. They're weak references. And then strong references, those are the ones that your dimensions automatically snap to when it's in the project. And then we have named references, and you saw those are the ones that are named. So I'm just going to come in here, and I'm going to end up deleting this guy here, but I'm just going to have some reference planes I already drew in here. But normally I'd come in and I'd draw this one going up, draw that one going up, draw this guy going over, and just like I'll just show you again, drawing one going over. When I'm done, I just select it, go in and name it, and then pick my is reference. And there's quite a few other things in there we can play with. And there's some other parts like going through the sizes and where the lengths are. This is going to help me out and help me identify things later on. Oops. Keep doing that. Keep hitting the wrong button, Brian. Don't do that. So now I'm going to go to a front view real quick, and I'm going to go in and set another reference plane. So I'm going to go over, double-click on my front, just like the browser we had before, and now I'm going to go in and set another reference plane. So I'm going to go over to Create. Now I'm going to go over to my reference plane button, located at the top there. Should have been using that arrow key. So I go to my reference plane, and then I'm going to select it. And anybody remember which direction? Do you remember, Lawrence? We're going to go left to right, right?
That's right.
Correct, yeah. So I'm going to start over here, go left to right. And now I'm going to set up something for my height. So I've got a reference plane in here, and I'm just going to click on the reference plane. And in here in the is reference, I'm just going to set this to be top. Now here I love this list. Where would you normally find the top, something called top within a list?
On the top?
On the top, yeah. No, not in Revit. It's at the bottom. That's just clever, I think, right? No, that's just laziness, I think, because it doesn't, yeah, it's not quite in alphabetical order. It's just, that's where they put it. So I put it
remember,
top.
top is on the bottom.
Top is on the bottom, so remember that. So then I'm going to come in and I'm going to grab this guy and I'm going to name him Top. And now you'll see after I go in and hit apply, he's named Top. I got him selected and it says, lo and behold, Top. So that's fun. So now we've come in and we've kind of set our structure. Remember, we're going in here, we're defining the shape of our object. And these reference planes have all the power. This is where everything's coming in to kind of get this form that we're going to build built. It's not going to be the geometry. Really, the power behind all this is the skeletal system, is these reference planes and these reference lines. You know, your body, if you didn't have a skeleton, would just kind of be a glooby mass down there on the floor or something like that. I'm sure Gary Larson has a picture of that somewhere. So we need this structural system to help us keep upright. And that's what we're going to get into, and that's what we're going to look at and do. So now we've talked about that. I'm going to get into our next slide and look at this. And we're going to look at the family parameters. We're going to start looking at the muscles within the body, you know, the muscles and the ligaments. Because those bones are held together by muscles and ligaments. That's how our skeleton works. You know, at least that's what my wife tells me. She's the smart one. So I've got these bones keeping my body upright. And then I've got these muscles that help me contract my bones together. You know, and the way the joints are putting in, that kind of helps it move. But I also have these ligaments that constrain the movement. They keep the muscles moving in one direction. They don't let them go too far. So the muscles just say, hey, flex. That's all they do. They just flex. They don't care what direction they're going. They just say flex. You know, constrict. Pull that bicep towards you. You know, whatever it needs to do. But we need the ligaments and the bones that kind of give us the range. That joint is defining the range. So that joint where the bones meet, that's where the reference planes come together. And then those ligaments, we're going to talk about constraints and stuff and get in here. So we're looking at our shape in here, and you can start seeing that in this particular one, we're going to start using different parameters. We're going to start off with the alignment tool. We're going to start using some of our dimensions in here. We're going to define those parameters. So we can see here within this hand diagram here that we've got some bone structure, but we also got ligaments and muscles in here, and there's some nerves in there too. And in this, so if we're looking at this, we can see that this dimension in here has a name, and the name's length. Well, that length is a parameter. It defines the length of something, and it's going to say this is the length of this particular object. Now, we could have called it width, we could have called it height, we could have called it whatever we wanted. We could call it, Lawrence. It doesn't matter what we call it, but it has some kind of different name, and hopefully it has a meaning behind it. So the Lawrence parameter might be, well, how many Lawrences tall is this thing? So we could set up a length parameter based on that. And then you'll see the equal ones. Well, those are constraints. Those are saying that these sides need to be equally maintained. They need to keep that different. Those things need to be equally distanced apart. So when we're looking at this and we're going in and we're drawing this side and we're drawing this side over here, they're always going to be the same distance from each other, no matter what. They're always going to be the same distance from each other, from this center point. So we can take a look at that and just kind of see how things are going on in there within our project. And then once we get done looking at some of that, we're going to go in and start adding family parameters to this. And what that means is that we're going to go in and start to define different things within this. We could have the length, height, and width out here being defined by those areas. Within that, we also could have different parameters that might be doing materials. Maybe you want to go in and look at set the material for the project, or make it so that you can flip it between different things. Maybe you're really wanting to do a couple chairs or something for your project. You're like, wow, it'd be nice to have a leather chair. And then the guys come in and say, you know what, we really want, some nicer, different fabric, and we want different color options. You're like, gee, it'd be nice to have something that would just automatically do that for me. Well, here you'll go in and you'll set up your different parameters for doing those kinds of things. And another area you're going to see is that we have areas to put in formulas in here, and we can start defining formulas. So all of this is located within the properties at the top of our box, and when we go in there, we're going to go and select this guy right here and see what's going on. And then once we get inside, we just click the Add Parameters button, and then we can go in and start adding the parameters in here. And we can see in this list that if I get in here, I have a place to put the name. Oops. And then I've got something, the type of parameter is called length. And then we can talk about, is it a shared parameter or is it a family parameter? In here, are you going to share with your other members of the family? Are you going to be stingy and keep it? Who knows? We've got types and instance parameters. So that's going to go back to, if you remember, is this a property that just affects that one object, or does it affect all of those same types of objects? So maybe you're putting in a parameter in one of your walls, and you're like, I want this specific wall, I want to be able to change the material on the outside or something on just this one wall. Well, that'd be an instance parameter. But if I want to go in and change all the walls at the same time, that'd be a type parameter. So those are the kinds of things we're looking at in here. And then the type parameters, we talked about length, but what are the other ones we get to see? Well, if we click on that button, we get to see not only do we have length, but we have something for text. Maybe I want to do something to do with, what's the manufacturer of this particular thing. That would be a text one. An integer. Maybe you're going to do an area that says for every 200 square feet, add a desk. Well, if I have 200 or if I have 300 square feet, I don't want 1.5 desks. I either want 1 desk or 2 desks. So I'd use an integer that would determine, am I rounding up to get that next desk, or do I round down? So it'd be an integer. You want whole numbers for those. And if you don't care about whole numbers or half numbers, you can just do a numbering system. So you go down this list here, we can see that we got all these different parameters in here that are going to be able to determine what are we looking at. All these different parameters within this list. You got area and volume and angle and slope, currency. So if you want to set something as currency, mass density, that's a new one this year. And then we've got the URL. Maybe you want a different website. You can do materials. You can do conditionals, like if I click this button, I want to, I really like this chair, Lawrence, but that we're sitting on here, but it'd be really nice if I had like a headrest. Well, I could build a headrest into the option, and then I just say, well, I click this button, and there's the headrest. And it automatically would add that feature, that function to that. So that's going to be some really nice things to have within our project. So now I'm going to go back and get back into my Revit project here. Come on, Revit. Come on, Revit. There we go. And I'm back in the front view. I'm going to go back to my floor plan view, my reference line view, and I'm going to go in and I'm just going to set in some different things in here. So I'm going to go over to my dimensions, and I'm simply going to put in a series of dimensions. So here I got some dimensions here, and we've got those built, and I'm going to put another stringer from here to here and build that out. So I'm going to set this up, and I'm going to do this for the other side too. So I've got some dimensions here and some dimensions here. And one more set. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to define a width and a depth for this object. I got a cube here, so I'm going to define a width and a depth. So once I've got these made, I'm just going to cancel out of this. And now I'm going to come over, and there's a couple different ways I'm going to do this. I'm going to go and select this one over here, go to my labels in my options toolbar, and within here I'm going to select add parameter. So now I'm going to go in and go down and say add the parameter, and it's already automatically picked stuff out for me. It says this is going to be a length parameter. It's already picked this out as an instance parameter. So then those things are grayed out. I can't change it. The other thing it's got is that it's going to say that this is a family parameter. I'm going to keep it a family. We're not going to get into shared parameters today. That's going to be a whole fun topic for another day. If you got some questions, fire them off, and we'll try to answer them offline. But I think for the most part, shared parameters can be a little bit of a rabbit hole when people first starting out. They're actually pretty easy once you get into them, but there's some management issues we got to get into because these are going to be linked throughout your whole project. But hey, why not? I'm talking about them. So shared parameters are something that you might list throughout the whole. Let's say that we have a cubicle system. Now, if I have a cubicle system and I've got like a depth of that countertop. Let's think about this. We have a cubicle system. We've got like 20 parts, 20 different assemblies for the cubicle system. Wouldn't it be nice to just set the depth once for each of those pieces? That would be a great thing to have. So that would be a shared parameter. We just say like cubicle depth, and anytime we change that once, it changes that for all of them. So that would be a very simple example of a shared parameter we could put on there. So I'm going to come in. I'm going to name this, and I'm going to name this one width. Now it's very important. If you're like me, if you're going to misspell, just be consistent. So consistently misspelling things is good. As long as you're consistently misspelling them correctly. Right? You everybody following me there? So if you consistently misspell them correctly, then you'll be okay. So I'm just going to hit OK, and you're going to watch what happens to this guy right here. Watch up here. See what happens when I do this? If you can't see, that's fine. The dimension is going to have a different change to it. And ooh, now look what it says. It says it is now 6'11" and 7/32, but it also put the word width. It said width equals this distance. So now I have a width parameter, and this is some great thing for us to have. So that's going to be our muscle. That's going to tell us what things are going on, and we're going to check that out in a second. The next one I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to this one, and I'm just going to hit the equal sign and watch what happens. Bada bing, bada boom. They both moved, and now they're both equal. So I've constrained that area, and that's not anything new. That's something that we get when we're doing this within our normal workflow within Revit, within our project, but we're applying it here. So all that stuff you learned when you were learning how to build projects, that all applies here. Nothing new there. And now I'm going to go over, I'm going to do the same for the other one, but this time I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I could come over here, grab this guy, and label him. But now I'm going to go over and I'm going to click on the edit type over here. So I'm going to select the edit type. It's going to open up a dialog box. So I'll go over, hit the edit type, and you'll see, aha! See what's in here? I automatically have something called width, and it's automatically reporting that it's 6'6". And if I look on the screen, there's the width right there, 6'6". That's amazing, I think. I think this is cool. So now I'm going to go down and I'm going to hit this Add Parameters button. Select that, and you'll see now this stuff isn't grayed out. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to go over and I'm going to name this one depth. And it's going to be a common parameter. We have got structural energy, all this other stuff. I'm going to keep it as length, and I'm going to keep listing it under dimensions. And we can see that's because it's going to list it under this title over here, this group. So now I've come in and I've listed this as depth, again, being very consistent with any spelling or misspelling that I might have. And I've got that in there, and you'll notice it's not grayed out, but this one is. So I've got that in here, and I can set that up to kind of have a purpose within my project. Then I can hit OK. And now I'll come over and I'll just select this guy, this dimension, and I'll, whoops, tiled that one. I didn't mean to hit that button. Close those guys real quick, and I'll expand this one back out again. Now I'll come over and go to the label, not my tile window, and you'll notice I've got depth in my list. I simply hit depth, and it says over constraining it. Oh no! So show. It canceled. Ah, what happened? Well, sometimes that's not going to work. I need to come down here, and I'll go into the properties and hit the depth over there, and it seems to be fine. So this is one of those things, and it happens in either way. I could select it from this side, or I could select it over here and get the results. And once in a while, most of the time, if it's going to error, it only errors about 5% of the time. I'm glad it did it for you guys here, is it's going to error when I go to the label at top and try to set it here. But sometimes that label will still happen down at the bottom. So most of the time it's going to be up here, but sometimes even when I come down here to select it, it's going to do it, and I'll select the top instead. So those are one of those pitfalls to get it done. But you can see it's done now. I have that depth area, and then I simply come over. So I got the muscles. Now I just need the ligaments, right? I need to constrain this down. So now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to hit the equal sign, and I've got that part done. So now I've got this thing in here, and it's kind of working for me. Now I'm just going to go and do the same thing for the front. Go to the front view, and I'm going to go in and set a height for this. So there's another way I could go do it is select this line, hit my permanent dimension. Now I've got that permanent dimension. I just slide them out. And I'm just going to select this guy, go to my label, say add parameter, and I'm going to change it to height. What is height?
Up and down.
That's right, up and down. I before to eat, except after C. Trying to remember all those rules. Weekends, holidays, all that stuff. Okay, so now we've got a height parameter in here. And I'm ready to go, right? So we're going to go back to our slideshow and kind of hit the next one. And let's see, did we forget something? Oh, that's right. There's this little thing called family issues we might have to have. And maybe the Godfather's going to have to come and talk to us for a little bit about our issues. So what do we need to think about with our family issues here before the dawn comes and straightens us out? Well, we got to remember to flex your model. So got to go in there and flex our model. So let's go back to Revit, and we're going to go in and pick, get into Revit. Now we got to go in and flex your model. What does that mean? Well, that means we got to go in and test this. We got to make sure this is working out. We don't want the dawn after us. So I'm going to come over here, and a couple different ways I can do it. I can select the line and then select the dimension and say, well, I want this to be 7 feet, and I see if anything breaks. Well, the line moved, the dimension moved. That seems to be working. I'll go to my floor plan, and we can do the thing. I can select dimension and do it here. But what I like to do is I like to go back and fire up my edit type. And once I get into edit type, I'm going to select it and flex it in here. So here I've got the depth, and I don't like the depth being like this, so I'm going to come in and put it down as 9 feet, and then I hit apply, and you're going to see that's going to change it to 9 feet. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do it back to 6 feet, and I'm going to hit apply, and you're going to see it's going to change it back to 6 feet. Now, looks like I clicked the button here for this other one, so I've got a reporting parameter in here. It's because I messed up. I'm going to go back in and delete this guy real quick, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But there's some reporting parameters. I'm just going to go in and recreate this parameter for this one over here and set this back to the width. And then fire this back up and, oh, shoot, that's right, because I got to go in and modify this and say it's a type, not an instance. Now I got this all set up. Now I can go in and flex this and say that that's 6 feet. Hit apply. That's going to go that way. come back in here, make that 8 feet. And maybe I still want to make this depth 9 feet. Hit apply, I can move them all at the same time. And I notice that what I'm mainly looking for to see, is it working correctly? Is it functioning correctly? Is it moving correctly? Because one of the things we can do is I can come in here and unequal this, and now watch what happens when I go into depth, and I might say this is 8 feet, hit apply, and, well, one side moved but not the other. That's not what I want. I want them to move equally. So it's got to be one of those things where it's working correctly for you, and you've got everything working the right way. So I simply come back out, put my constraints on, but you see how that worked. That's 8 feet, and decided to shrink one side but not the other because I didn't have my ligaments. The muscles were still working, but the ligaments weren't quite there. So now I go in and hit the equal sign, and then it goes in and constrains it. So that's looking pretty good. Pay attention to Don. We're going to go in and flex your model. When you're going to flex the model, you want to flex it often. You want to flex it a lot. Do it little baby steps. Even if you're out there and you're doing a very complex model and you've been doing this for years, we all go in and we flex it, and we flex it all the time. It's just one of the most important things, because the last thing we want to do is upset Mr. Coleon here. We do not want him showing up at our doorstep trying to make us offers, because there's just nothing you want to have. So remember, flex your model. Now the next thing we're going to get into is we're going to get in and try skinning our model. And you know what, Lawrence? I had this thing with the bones and with the muscles and everything else, and I just couldn't find a good picture of skin.
I find that hard to believe.
I know. So I just image not found, nothing was coming up. So, but you get the idea. We're going to start putting a shape around this. So where we go to put the skin out, or skin on, is we're going to go over and into our model. And we're going to go over to our forms area, and we're going to start selecting the forms in here. So we have extrusion and blend, revolve, sweep. So we've got all these different forms. And then don't forget, on top of that, we also have these void forms. The same ones, but these are subtractions. So what forms are is they're just shapes. We're going to go in and build shapes. That's not hard. Everybody, even my little kids, they can draw some basic shapes and stuff, some squares, and then we just tell it, okay, that square is a cube now. We get to get out there and kind of be creative with our creative juices and kind of get that thing flowing in our minds. So we're able to go in and start skinning those out there. And then once we've got those shapes, we're going to go over to our modify tools. We're going to kind of use some different things in here. Mainly, the main one we're going to go and use, we're going to go and use the align button. But we can use all these other buttons to kind of join things together. You're going to see a lot of stuff having to do with the sketch mode, so we'll be in the sketch mode constantly when we're using these shapes. So as we're going to go in here and draw these different shapes, we'll get in the sketch mode. Now, one thing I really like about having this is that when we're in this mode, we've got a lot of nice tools. We get this extrusion, these blends, or revolves. If you've ever tried to model with the tools in Revit for all the big stuff, it's really hard to do. It gets a little bit clunky. You have to know, well, how do I do a revolve? Well, you have to have a profile and then an axis to revolve around. So it's one of those things where you got to be able to really think about it when you're in that project. But here, they give us the tools. They tell us what to select. It makes it really nice. So I really enjoy working within this. And there's another program out there called Vasari. If you haven't had a chance, I'd recommend go downloading it. It's a very nice sandbox area to go play with the stuff and get used to the tools. It's a lot like SketchUp. Some people say it's a little bit harder, and it probably is a little bit, but it's a lot more powerful. If you can do SketchUp, you can do the same thing in Revit. This really just takes a little bit of practice, just like it did in SketchUp to get it done, and you'll get it done. You'll get the same results and more. Because one of the things, I know if you're listening to me now, you more likely have Revit, and if you're doing a workflow taking SketchUp into Revit, that's fine. I don't want to deter you from that, but maybe you want to get into a little bit more because you can take advantage of a lot more tools with the massing tools. So being able to do these voids and stuff is going to be really handy getting that out there. Maybe one day we'll even get Lawrence up there to take a spin on this stuff. So now I'm going to go back into my project, and I'm just going to play a little bit. So now we're going to go in and we're going to build some forms. So I'm going to go over to my Create tab. So I got the Create tab, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to use the Extrude on the forms. So I'm going to make an extrusion. And I love these tool tips on here. They kind of give you, if you hover over, I don't know if you ever did this, but it shows you, tells you a little bit about what's going on. So if you're ever curious, well, how does this work? It says create a 3D extrusion by a 2D shape, a profile. So all I need is a closed shape, and I told you we're going to start with a cube. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to draw this extrusion, and I'll hit cancel real quick, but I'm going to go in and draw a cube shape. Now, one of the tricks we're going to look at is if I use the rectangle, I'm going to go in and use the rectangle, and I'm going to snap on the corners. Here, the intersections, and the intersections over on the right side. So you can see it's saying intersection. When I finish this click, when I click this second click with my left mouse, you're going to see that the dimensions are there, temporary dimensions, and now I get the locks. So now I'm going to come in and just lock this into place. And what am I doing? I am now attaching that sketch to the bones. So think about this. I'm drawing the skin right now, and I'm attaching the skin to the bones. We already saw that the reference planes, the bones, move. So Lawrence, you want to take a guess what happens when the reference planes move? What's going to happen with this cube? It's going to move. It's going to move. It's going to move. It's going to move around. And now that I've got this locked, now let's say I forget to lock something. Now that's going to be fine. We're going to get into how to fix that in a little bit. Or better yet, let's say, you know what, Brian, I tried to draw this cube thing you had, and it didn't work out. So I'm going to go and erase this real quick and just show you. Well, the other tool we have, so let's say I went in and I started over here, but I didn't click that right spot. I got two locks, but I need the other two on. Well, how am I going to do that? I'm going to use this guy right here, that alignment command. So I've got the two in there, and I'm going to lock them in place before I forget. Then I'm going to go to the alignment, and I'm just going to say align this guy to there, and lock it. I'm going to go to the next one, align, over here, lock it. Now it should work, right? Well, let's hope so. Let's pray. Now we need to go in and we need to hit our famous check mark. I don't want to hit the X. I got to hit the check mark. I got to finish out my sketch mode here. So I hit the check mark and I'm done. And now I've got a shape in here, and I'm going to go over and change the visibility so we can see that I've got a cube or a square. We don't know if it's a cube yet. I'm just going to give you a little peek. It actually is a cube. We got a cube in here. Actually, what I'll do is I'll actually tile that so we can see that side by side. So I've got one, I've got this here. And so now I'll tile it. Now we've got two of them. I've got the 3D view, I've got this view in here. So now I'm going to come over, and I'm going to need to go in and set the height, right? So I'll go to the front, and I've got the front view, and now I just want to set the height. There's two different ways of doing this. I could go in and select this shape, and you can see in my background there, I'll tile these windows one more time, that I've got this shape selected. I could grab this and move it up here and align it and lock it. However, I don't like doing that. I really, really like this align command because I know it's working. I know it's doing what I want it to do. So I'm going to come over and hit my alignment tool, select the top line, click on it. I've got that aligned, and you can even say it's saying it's lining up here in my 3D view. I get to see that line right there. You can see that. And now I'm going to come over and hit my lock. It's going to lock it into place. And we're done, right? We've got this cube. We've got it working. Let's take a look here and see what's happening next. So we go in here and the Don's back. He's telling me you got to flex that thing or he's going to be showing up on your doorstep. So let's go back. Let's flex this thing real quick. So now I've got this on. I'm going to go in and open this up, and now I'm going to flex it. So I'm going to change the width, the height, and the depth. Hit apply. The thing grew on me, right? I can check all that. I can look at that. There's the nines over here. So I can now go back. Maybe I'll make this 5 feet. 5 feet, 5 feet, 5 feet. Hit apply. There, my cube is shrinking down. now I've got this thing kind of flexing out and moving around the way I want it to within this. So now the next thing I want to go and do is I'm going to go put it in an environment. So I've got this working in here. Now I'm going to go in and start a new project. And I'm just going to open up a basic project in here. I'm going to hit Control-Tab, go back to my other project, and I'm just going to hit this button we've been neglecting, Load into Project. So I hit Load into Project. There it is, my family. They look so cute. They grow up so fast, don't they, Lawrence?
They do.
Wow, look at them. Woo! So now I'm going to put a couple of those families in here. My family one. And look at them. All cute. All three of them are really cute. It's like my kids at home, right? But boy, do they grow up. So if I look at them, here I got this family, and I can come in here and say, look, I got a width, a height, a depth, and now I can say, well, set them all to 8, hit apply, and they all grew. So I'm in here, I'm seeing, wow, this is really starting to work out. This is doing what I need it to do. I've got this as 666. That probably wasn't the right, so let's do 676. Hit apply. There we go. We've got some different heights and stuff in here. Well, if I want to go make new ones, maybe I don't want those. I can just say duplicate. And now maybe I want to do an 8 by 8 by 9. And I'll set that one up. And I've duplicated it. Now I'll make this an 8 by 8 by 9. Yeah, I know I probably should add a different order there. But this is, now you can see that one's an 8 by 8 by 9. This one's called Family 1. And we can see in our pull-down list, I've got 2 different families. In here I've got Family 1 and the 889. So I'm able to go in there and set up these families and get them in different ways within my project. So I'm going to hit Control-Tab, get back into my family editor, and here I pull up my family. Now I'm going to come over and get in here, and I can actually assign family types. So I'm going to come in here and define a new family type. I'm going to call it the 5 by 5 by 5 because I already have that one existing, right? So I got that one, and I'm going to set another new one, and I'm going to call it the 2 by 2 by 8. So I'll set this, then you got to come remember, I'm going to set this as 2, set this as 8, set this guy as 2, and then I can hit apply and see it change. See it's flexing around here. And now I'll go load it into my project. Now at this point, you might have seen this before, it says load into projects. I can either override the existing version or override the existing version and its parameters. For what you're basically getting into, it doesn't matter. This is going to happen when you start getting a little bit more advanced with things in here. But I'm going to go in and say override existing, just the top one. And now I can see when I select one of these, not only do I have that family, but I have all those other types in here that I can go select from. So I got this 2 by 2 by 8. I go to my 3D view, and I can see that I've got those different families that I've loaded inside. So I'm able to go in and kind of look at that and change that out. So that's a bit about our families here, where we're at on time. And we're getting towards the end of that hour. Go in and I'll just give you, whoops, there's the done again. Remember you to flex your models, tip your waitresses. I'll give us one more family here that we can, or a parameter we can look at. So I'm going to go in here and add a new parameter. Wouldn't it be nice to have a material parameter for these? So I'm going to say add, and I'm going to call this an instance parameter, and I'm going to call this material. I'm getting real inventive here. And this type of parameter is going to be a material parameter. It's going to group it under materials and finishes. It's going to be instance. So now when I hit OK, there I have the material parameter. I'm going to hit OK. But now I need to assign it. I need to assign this to something. What do I assign that to? Well, if I want to change the color of my skin, I got to assign it to the skin, right? So I'm simply going to select this parameter. And then over here where it says material, I've got this little button right over here. So I'm going to go in and select that button. Go over here, material, hit OK, and then now it has a material parameter. Now I'm just going to go back in, load this back into my project, override it, go into my 3D view, and I'll go to something that's starting to show some materials, consistent colors. We see, they're just gray boxes. That's because they're just using the default. So I just select one, and now I have a material parameter. I'll swear to you, this didn't exist before. Now I can simply come in here, select this. It's going to open up my big long dialog. It's going to take me forever to get it out of. Now I can go back over, and I'm just going to choose this resin, the black resin here, and now I've got that particular material on it. I can go and select this one and make this one a completely different material. Within it, this is an instance parameter, so all of them can be different from one from the other. So now I've got this in as copper. I can go in and see that as copper. Maybe I need to go in and realistically render that and see, well, that was probably acoustical ceiling tile. But I can also go in here and copy this one out. And this material can be different than that other one. So right now it's acoustical ceiling tile, but if I come in here, because it's an instance parameter, I can come in and make this, the door frame. Why not? I don't know what this object is yet, but now I can see that I've got different materials in there for my different things. I can go in and reassign this different family size. So maybe I want to go in and change this one to be a 10, a 10, and a 10. It's going to change both of those because those are type parameters. So there you have it. This is kind of my basic family in here. And what I typically do is I save this as my starting family, because everything out there is going to have a width, a depth, and a height to it that we can go and assign it for. So now you can go in and you can start going in and using this for other ones. I can make this a chair now because a chair has width, depth, and height. I can make it a picture frame. I can make it anything I want that's going to have those parameters on it, and it has material. So this sets it up. If I want to go in and do that, I simply go back to my floor plan, select the shape, delete it, and redo the shape. I can go in here and make a rectangle or make a cylinder instead, or whatever the shape needs to be. You don't have to have a 3D shape. We can also do 2D shapes. So I can go in here and make a 2D shape. That's just line work. And put that within my project. So if I wanted to do that, simply go and delete it. Then I can go back into my Annotate tab, do some symbolic lines. Actually, I go into my Create tab and I'll do some model lines. That way we can see them in 3D. And now I'll just come in and assign these this way. Now that I'm done, it's just going to have some line work in there. But when I load into my project, override, and guess what? These are no longer 3D stuff. They're now 2D stuff. So you don't have to have, there's no reason to have just 3D blocks. You can use this for 2D blocks. And I can select any one of these, go to the family and just check, pick a different size, hit OK, and it's going to change it, just like it would a 3D family, and change it up and down. So no reason to just stick with 3D. You can make all 2D blocks and have them in there too, or blocks. Ooh, just the AutoCAD getting in there. 2D families. Got to have the families. It's all about the family. So let's get back here. Let's go back to the dawn. See what's going on. And now we'll, what else can families do? Well, remember, we can go in and add all those additional types of parameters. The text, the length, the volume, the angle, everything else like that. We can make them parametric. We can start putting formulas on them. Array parameters, things like that we can kind of list it. And that's going to get into just some basic geometry. Remember, it's everything in the brackets, then your multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, kind of workflow environment. So we can get into that a little bit later. Shared parameters, starting to go in and share those between different objects. We can start getting into detail levels. What do you see at the coarse, medium, fine detail level? We can start looking at arrays. We can start looking at type catalogs. We can start looking at all these different kinds of things that start popping out. Yes, that is a CAD done in Revit. It is parametric, made by a friend of mine called Marcelo. He's out in LA. He's made all kinds of wonderful objects in Revit. You can see, you can really get in there, and it's just that first step you need to take. So I encourage you all to go out there and start building out that first shape for you. Start building that out there. And just remember the dawn. Flex that model. It's oh so important. Flex that model. So here we are. Here's our classes coming up. If you're interested, coming out there and taking some of those. Hey Lawrence, did we get any questions coming in?
I answered. I was able to, again, last minute. If anyone has any questions to answer, please feel free to type now. We'll get to them. There are a few questions that we had to answer offline, or we will answer offline, and I actually have those written down. So those people are expecting us. But again, any last minute questions, please feel free to type them in, and we can answer them now.
All right.
We did have a question pop up. Name of the sandbox.
Name of the sandbox. Oh, that tool I mentioned earlier. David, that was Vasari.
Oh, that's right.
Vasari. Are they calling it Project Vasari? It just went out. You might have to be on subscription to pick it up, though. But there is I can't remember off the top of my head. It was free, and then they just recently bumped it up in the last 2 weeks to Vasari. It's kind of it's a mini Revit, if you were. It's got a really nice environment for it. Really great environment. Did you see another question on that?
Yeah, another question. When do you use type and instance parameters?
Well, Ryder, when we're using type parameters, that's going to be for the whole family. So if I wanted to go in and set the door heights, that would be a type parameter usually. So all my doors would be, if I changed one door, it changed them all. Those kinds of things like that. Well, let's say, a better example would say, let's say we're dealing with furniture. We're dealing with a chair type, a chair that we like, and we're putting it in our office. We might go in there and we set the chair up to have, they're all the same sizes, but maybe we want to have different finishes. So the sizes might be by the type, but the finishes might be instance, so that I can go into one office and have a different material, and I could go in another office and have another material, but the type is still the same. So if I change the size, they all change in size, no matter what office I'm in. But if I want to keep the material separate, that would be an instance parameter that I would go in there. All right, looks like we've got,
Nope.
Cool.
Can you schedule type and instance parameters?
Can you schedule type and instance parameters? Yes, you can. Be it some, yes, you can. For the easier way of putting that, yes, you can. 10 chairs, 2 with leather and 8 with fabric. Yes, Tyler. So, if you wanted to go in and list those out, you could do that. Yeah, nice cow. Yep, that cow again was done by Marcelo. He also did a 747 and an elephant. So the cow is somewhat impressive. The elephant is just spectacular. If you want, go out there and Google Revit cow or Revit elephant, and you'll see a lot of his work. He's a nice guy too. He's a family man too. He's got like 3 kids.
Nice
like
plug
I do.
in there.
Yeah. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. Here we've got again our upcoming events.
Again, any questions about any of our training, feel free to give us a call, your account rep, or just our main line. Visit our website, or we also do a lot of these content-related or content-specific training sessions here or at your office as well. So if you are a group of folks that want to learn basic information, just something short, we can come out to your office and do that. And also to let everybody know, some of you may or may not know, there is such thing as Revit LT. So there is families capability in LT. It's limited from the full version of LT, but it is available now. And again, it's been out for a little while, not too long, but so some of you may be aware of this and some may not.
Yeah, I think the family part, I haven't gotten in it totally, but I think it's got everything for families. So what we've seen here, you'll be able to do all that within the Revit LT version. They've cut out other things in there, but the Revit LT is in there. And then let's see, what have we learned? What did we get out of this? We examined the family editor, so now you all should be comfortable with the family editor. We've got created the structure. You remember we got the bone work in there. We've constructed some simple parameters for our project. We got the muscles, the ligaments in there, and we applied them to the structure. And then we combined our forms to create the families, the skinning of them. So you can see that we've kind of gone in. We've got that all done. If you have any other questions or comments or anything else you want to think of, hit us up on that webinars at CAD-1.com. We'll respond to that. We'll get you stuff out there. If you liked it, please let us know. If you didn't like it, please let me know. If you want to see something else for a webinar, let me know. We'll go out there and do whatever we can. I just had a lot of people who were saying, yeah, I love Revit. I'm really good at it. And I said, what about the family editor? And they go, The what? No, I never touched that thing. And that's what I wanted to get out of, was making you guys sure that you guys were able to get comfortable with that, start playing with it, get in there. There's a ton more stuff that you can do, and we constantly have people coming in, learning more about it. We cover a class that gets you into some really high-end stuff right away. We start looking at some other things in there, and then people are just flying. They love it. Once they get a grasp of it, once we're able to kind of show them where the things are, the sky's the limit. You really get a lot out of it. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this today. And from Lawrence and I, we thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sweet.
Our family.